joining our admissions webinar for the Ross School of Business MBA program. I'm joined here today by Diana Economy. I'll let her introduce herself.
Welcome, everyone. Good to have you on our webinar. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Admissions here at Ross and also a Ross 2010 grad.
So the purpose of today's session is to walk through the various components of the application. I'm assuming that many, most, or maybe all of you are in the process of applying to business school, Ross in particular. So we want to give you an overview of the things that we're looking for in each part of the application, how we look at it as a whole, and to answer your questions. We'll go through section by section and give you a chance to ask questions as we go along. Before I go on, I wanted to point you in the direction of the team. So we've got many people that you may have met while we were on travel around the world. Unja Yu, Jill Huerta, Brian Johnson, myself and Diana, and Taya Saff. All of us have traveled the world to hopefully meet many of you, and hopefully we'll meet you in Ann Arbor as well. But before we go into the actual components of the app, I wanted to share with you some of the things that are new at Ross, some of the things that we're excited about right now. This week, I'm really excited about the real-world business opportunities and discussions our students will be engaging in. For example, today, we're having the Integrated Product Development Student Trade Show. It's a mouthful. So what IPD, that's Integrated Product Development, is, it's a course that combines students from Ross, engineering, and the School of Art and Design in interdisciplinary teams to design, build, price, and market a product. And each team kind of operates as its own firm, and they're competing against each other. This year's product challenge was to design dorm furniture using locally made parts and standard catalog stuff, hardware that you can get from a standard catalog, that can be easily assembled by college students. So in the first stage of this competition, people from all around the world could log in to view the IPD trade show products and vote on what they thought were the best. Today what's going to happen is a live trade show where people can come and look at the products, talk to the makers, and then vote on what the best product is. So that's pretty exciting in real world. On Friday, two great things are happening. First, it's the Revitalization and Business Club will be hosting a talk with Detroit's emergency manager, Kevin Orr. He's going to discuss the city's bankruptcy and rebuilding efforts. The Revitalization and Business Club connects students with leaders and change makers in business, education, and community who are working to revitalize Detroit. So students have real-life experience working on revitalization efforts in Detroit. Also happening on Friday, we're kicking off the Michigan Business Challenge, which is a campus-wide business plan competition where students compete to win over $60,000 while pitching to and getting feedback from judges who are real entrepreneurs and investors. Past winning teams have been comprised of business students teamed up with students from other programs across the university. So another multidisciplinary opportunity for students to engage. A couple weeks ago, we had our marketing symposium, which we believe is the largest of any business school across the country. There were over 25 companies and hundreds of recruiters here to meet, network with, and talk with our students. A couple of the session topics were around big data with companies like Dell, Kraft, and Pfizer, and a session on marketing to millennials, many of whom are applying to business school. We've also had the CMO of General Mills and the COO of S.C. Johnson stop by in the last few weeks. So that's a pretty regular occurrence for executives from companies across various industries and companies to come through Ann Arbor. So we're really excited about all those things going on, and this is just a snapshot in 1 week.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sujin. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what we're looking for in applicants. We're actually going to go through the various parts of the application and hopefully answer some of the frequently asked questions that our team receives regularly. I would encourage you, as we're doing so, to feel free to submit questions via the question feature on our webinar, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. I will tell you that if questions are very specific, we may need to get back to you after on a one-off basis. We will be answering probably more general questions here through this format, but would be happy to make sure you get the information you need. This session is for you as you prepare your application. So to start with, what are we looking for? So in terms of academic ability, we are looking for you to submit a standardized test, either the GMAT or the GRE, which I would guess most of you, if you are planning on applying by our January 2nd deadline, have probably already taken the GMAT or the GRE. As for the GMAT, our average middle 80th percentile is 650 to 750, with an average GMAT score in the low 700s. So you should probably take a look at that online. If you take a look at our class profile, that will give you a baseline to understand where you fall against our average class profile for the GMAT. For the GRE, we don't actually publish our scores. The GRE is commonly used for people who apply to multiple programs, whether it's the business school and a dual degree in, let's say, public policy or public health. We do see that we just don't have enough data yet to be able to provide you with averages around the GRE. Why are we taking a look at your test scores? Well, we're taking a look at your test scores in conjunction with your transcripts and your overall work experience, the nature of that work experience, whether it's had quantitative elements to it or not, to understand how likely you are to be successful in our academically and quantitatively rigorous curriculum. We don't have specific cutoffs that we are looking for. It is part of a holistic review that we take of your overall application. I will answer one question that we already have submitted, which is to say if your scores are below the 80th percentile range, should you mention that in your optional essay? The answer to that is no. You don't need to include anything about your test scores in the optional essay. We will be able to see the test scores and your score as is. And again, given that we're taking a holistic review of your application, we will be able to take a look at that.
Diana, you want to say anything about the quant score in particular?
Sure. So we are taking a look at your quant score because we do, again, want to make sure you're going to be successful in our quantitatively rigorous curriculum. So to give you an idea of what I mean by that, in the very first 7 weeks of your time at Ross here, you take statistics, microeconomics, accounting, and strategy. So again, we are looking to make sure that you are going to be able to be successful in those courses because, of course, at Ross as well as at any business school that you attend, really, you are going to be not only in academics, but you're going to be preparing for your career. You're going to be engaging in a variety of extracurricular activities. So again, in taking a look at the test score, we want to make sure that you're going to be able to succeed here academically.
Thanks.
For those who are interested in the TOEFL or the IELTS, in terms of foreign language proficiency, for those who have not attended, for example, an undergraduate institution where the medium of language was not in English, or have not worked in an English-speaking environment for the past few years, there are further details online about our TOEFL or IELTS score, but for those who that requires TOEFL, we're looking for usually a minimum score of 100, and I would say that we do pay close attention to your speaking score as well. As far as transcripts, one of the things with transcripts is that there's nothing that you can do about them at this point, unfortunately. They're all in the past. So we will take a look at any academic courses that you've taken, whether undergraduate, graduate courses, or if you've taken any one-off courses throughout your previous experience. We are taking a look at a variety of things. Most importantly, the trajectory of success that you've had in your academic experience. How well did you do? Did you challenge yourself? And particularly, did you take any quantitative courses that are, again, going to give us confidence that you will likely be successful in our curriculum? So again, taking a look at your test scores, your transcripts, and again, your work experience, which you may have done a lot of quantitative work in that. We're going to take a look at all of that to get a feel for how likely you are to be successful in our courses. Now, we often get people asking about whether they should take supplemental courses or should they retake the GMAT. One of the things that we look for is, if you've got a limited amount of time, both of them would be great, but really focusing on presenting a strong GMAT score is probably going to be in your best interest. We only have a few more weeks here for you to be able to sign up for that, but if that's something that you're considering, that would probably override taking a quantitative course. Having said that, any preparation that demonstrates to us that you're likely to be successful, in our curriculum will be helpful for us.
Let's talk a little bit about how many times you should take the GMAT. Let's say you've taken it once and you didn't score in the range that you would like to have. Does it hurt you to retake it? Absolutely not. We encourage and we actually do like to see people try to improve their scores if their first time out of the gate wasn't solid. That said, it's up to you, but you always want to put your best foot forward, and the GMAT is one area that you can change. As Diana mentioned, your transcript is done, your undergrad experience is done. The GMAT is one area where you can strengthen your academic profile for the admissions committee's view.
And we often see that people do take the GMAT, more than once, certainly, and I do see a few questions here around how many times is the right amount of times to take it. Usually what we'll tell people is we look for you to submit your application when you feel that it is the strongest. So we want to see it with you putting your best foot forward. So if you feel like, you haven't given it your best effort and you want to take another shot, great. If you feel like you've taken it and that's a good spot for you to stay, that's great too. We want to see you when you're at your best. There's a question about, do you consider courses taken post-undergraduate as part of your review, as well as professional designations such as CPA, CFA?
We do. We take that all into consideration. If you've taken an online math course, for example, after undergrad, accounting, finance, statistics, economics, yes, we will take that into consideration. If you do have some kind of quantitative certification, we will also take that into consideration. So let's say your GMAT score in the quant is not as high as you would like it to be, those other things can help offset how we look at your quantitative skills.
Great. There's a question around, do we have a middle 80th percentile range for quantitative scores?
No, we don't go to that level of granularity.
Okay, great. In terms of having prior master's degrees, how do we think about people who've got advanced degrees? How does that play into the admissions process?
It's helpful. It's not a substitute for full-time work experience, which we are absolutely looking for, but it can be helpful in terms of having potentially quantitative experience or just having another perspective. We feel that the diverse backgrounds bring a lot to our community, and having a graduate degree in another field can definitely be helpful.
Great. Two quick questions here. One about needing to submit official transcripts. Yes, we do need official transcripts ultimately from all courses that you've taken, including all of your postgraduate courses if you've taken additional continuing education courses that were for which you received credit. We need those transcripts.
However, in terms of the timing, we don't need the official transcript until you just prior to enrollment. You can upload unofficial transcripts for the purposes of the application, but you will not be allowed to enroll until we get an official transcript.
Do we take the highest GMAT score?
We do. We don't average it, but we don't also take the highest from each section. We look at the highest total score.
How do we think about CFAs, different certifications that people may have, different designations? How is that evaluated?
It can help, but again, it's a holistic review. So let's say your GMAT score and your quant scores were really low, but you've got this CFA. It's going to make us scratch our heads a little bit about how is that possible. Conversely, if you did great in your academics and in undergrad and you did really poorly in a post-undergrad course, again, we're going to wonder why there's a disconnect. So we're looking for ability, range, in your performance.
Okay, great. So I'm guessing we'll probably get a few more questions around this, but I want to move forward, and we will spend some time at the end trying to answer some more of your questions. So beyond academic ability, we are looking for your experience.
So we are looking at your resume very closely. On the admissions committee, the vast majority of us will look at your resume first. So that is our introduction to you. We want to see something that's highly professional, very easy to understand. Granted, while we've read thousands and thousands of resumes from people who have really varied experience, we still want it to be clear enough to, let's say, your mother or a friend who doesn't work in your industry. So try to exclude any of the jargon, the acronyms, the very specific language that you might have in your field. while this is not a job resume, you're not applying for a job in your current industry, it should be highly professional. What you should focus on is the impact of the various roles that you've had. We don't want it to read like a job description. We want to know what you in particular did in your role. And if there's something lost in translation, if we don't understand exactly what you did, what kind of impact you had on your project, on your team, that's a missed opportunity for you to put your best foot forward. So really focus on the resume. We encourage it to be one page. Focus mostly on or predominantly on your work experience. We're not looking for a huge section on education. We're going to have your transcript and other things. It is okay. In fact, we do encourage you to have a line at the bottom with your interests, other activities that you're involved in, things that are pretty important to you, because that will be a point of conversation in your interviews. And it helps give us an idea of how you spend your time, what's important to you. We're trying to get a picture of you as a whole person and not just as a student and as an employee somewhere, but as a whole person.
So Jen, I have an insider tip for them. All right, what's that? My insider tip is this. The resume is the first thing that I look at when I'm looking at an application, because it is essentially a quick snapshot of who you are as an applicant. It's going to give me, a brief overview of your academic experience. It's going to show me your professional experience. Ideally, it's going to show me the impact that you've had at the employers where you've worked. So we're really looking to say not just what was your job description at some place, but really what did you do? How did you make a difference? Why were you a great employee there that you were able to make those contributions that maybe somebody else couldn't or didn't? So what differentiates you? And you're going to really want to highlight that on your resume. In terms of, changing screens, looking at your questions here. So question about, should one's work experience go all the way back to undergrad? What type of work experience should be included on your resume?
We really want you to focus the resume content on post-undergrad, full-time work experience. Now, as far as internships that you might have had during college, it's really a judgment call. If it was something very substantive where you were having a big impact on a project or a team, it might be okay to include. But keep in mind that when the average number of years of work experience of our students is 5 years, if you're focusing most of the real estate of your resume on internships, it's just not going to compete as strongly as if you were to have more about your post-undergrad full-time work experience. If you did work study during college, it's fine to include a line about that as well, because that helps us understand your college experience.
Okay. So there's a few questions about the length of the resume, 1 to 2 pages, and I don't want to get too hung up on it. It is preferred for us to have a 1-page resume, and I'll tell you why. Both right before I joined the admissions team, I was a recruiter for one of the major consulting firms. And while I was at Ross, I was actually one of the peer career coaches. Ross has over 50 peer career coaches who are people in the internships most recently that our MBA 1s are looking for. So these are MBA 2s who help to advise MBA 1s as well as MBA 2s on their career search. So that includes how people should be formatting or phrasing their resume to a particular industry, or doing mock interviews with our MBA 1s. So having that experience, having advised both peers on their resumes, as well as having been a recruiter for a top consulting firm, I will tell you that if your resume is not 1 page right now, it will be when you start an MBA program. Any of the major MBA employers are looking for a 1-page resume, and every major MBA program will have their students create a 1-page resume. So what we're really doing is trying to get you ahead of the game in terms of putting your resume in a format that's going to be palatable for employers. Beyond that, your resume is actually the only thing that your interviewer will see if you are invited for an interview, which we'll talk about in a second. So again, your interviewer is not going to actually have access to the rest of your application, so you're going to want your resume to stand alone as a piece that's going to be able to convey who you are professionally and what your experience has been. All right, so I think we can move on to recommendations.
Sure. So one of the most important things in your recommendations is to choose a good person to write the recommendation. By good, I mean an appropriate person, someone who is ideally a supervisor, currently or previously. We're looking for the most recent supervisors possible. We realize that not everyone can ask their current supervisor because they may not know that you're applying to business school. In that case, if you could use your previous and your one before that supervisor, that would be ideal. The reason we're looking for supervisors is because we want to gain a perspective on you and your professional skills, abilities, development areas, and potential. So those are things that are best assessed by a supervisor rather than someone who is a peer or a professor. Pick people who know you well. I'm hoping that if you're applying for round 2, you've already asked your recommenders, because if you haven't, it's not a big window of time that you've given them to write a good recommendation letter for you. It's perfectly fine to, and in fact encourage, that you have a conversation with them about where you're applying, why those schools, what you want to do post-MBA, and kind of remind them about their work with you so that it's fresh in their minds how that they can talk about you. The more examples and specifics they can provide, the more legitimacy it's going to give to the statements that they make about you. When they say that, you know, Jane is an awesome employee, that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Define awesome, and in what context did you see this awesomeness come out? So if you can carefully, diplomatically ask them to write examples of some of the things that they're going to say about you, that would be ideal.
Great. All right, why don't we move on to fit?
So fit is one of those elusive things. People always ask us, what is the admissions committee looking for beyond the grades and the work experience? And fit is slightly different for every school, but when you look at school websites, we're all saying very similar things. We're collaborative, so of course we want people who are going to be collaborative. We want people who are driven and accomplished. So how do we assess all of those things? Some of it will come out through your resume, but a lot of it will come out through more interpersonal means, through the essays, the interview, and team exercise. So with the essays, what we're looking for is to get to know you as a person, understand what drives you, understand what matters to you, how you think. The questions are thought about very carefully each year. After we review all of the essays from a given admissions year, we go back and ask ourselves, were we able to get the kind of insights from the essays that we were hoping to get from the questions that we've asked? And so the questions that we have been vetted very closely, and I encourage you to answer the questions that are asked by each school. Every school can tell when you've tried to throw in a response to a different school's essay question. If you want to go to a school, take the time to answer the questions that they specifically ask. Of course, we do ask for your career goals and your reason for Ross. Many schools will do that, both in the essays and or in the interview. That's important because we want to make sure that there's a good fit for you as well as for us. That's going to create the best experience for you. Understand the kind of community, the kind of opportunities that each school provides, and speak to those specifically and why that is important to you. That's probably the best piece of advice that I could give to applicants, not just to Ross, but in general, to be very specific about what you want to do and why you want to do it and why that particular place.
What types of things should go in the optional essay?
So the optional essay is truly optional. That isn't code for if you really like us, you need to do that one too. It really means if there are things in your application that may not seem obvious or that require a little more explanation, that's a place to do it. For example, if you have a gap in your resume, that might be something to address. Maybe you were a part of the financial crisis layoffs. That would be something to talk about. What did you do in that time? It could be something in your undergrad experience where there was a gap or something else. Something that isn't obvious from looking at the materials that you've provided, that require a little bit more explanation. It's not a place for you to say, I really love Ross. Let me tell you again, I really love Ross, because that doesn't help. What we want to know is what we don't know about you that you think is really important for us to understand.
Great. How about the interviews?
The interviews. So this is by invitation only at Ross, and it's based on our review of your application to see if there's admissibility and potential fit based on all the components that we see online. So when you're invited to interview, you will interview with one of our second-year MBA students or our alums around the world. It's up to you where and with whom you want to do it. There is no greater weight given to interviews that are conducted by students on campus. So do what's most convenient for you. That said, we highly encourage you to visit Ross and other schools that you're applying to, because you'll also have the opportunity to meet students, get a feel for the environment, the classes, the community, the city. That's a really important piece for you. So in terms of the interviewer will have just your resume. They're not going to be given any notes in advance about, ask questions about this or that in particular based on your application. They're just going to have your resume. So it's going to be a 30-minute session where the interviewer will ask you questions about your experience, your goals, your reasons for some of the decisions that you've made in your career, your undergrad, and trying to get to understand you as a person and how you might, what kind of a student you might be at Ross. We're gauging not only your experience, but also your communication and your interpersonal skills, because your MBA experience will be very heavily interpersonally based. Which leads me to the next part of our admissions process, a new part called the team exercise. At Ross and at a lot of business schools, a lot of the work that you'll be doing, whether it's for an econ problem set or for a strategy case, will be done through and with teams. Teams of students that you will be put on teams with, or you may create, it happens in both ways at Ross. But because it's so heavily team-based, we wanted to get some insight into how you might be on a team. So we created a team exercise, which is a part of our interview process. It's optional, and by optional we mean truly optional. But again, we highly encourage it for you and for us. For you, because it gives you the opportunity to understand how we do teams, and you can meet other people who are applying to Ross, so that will give you an early glimpse into the kind of community that you'll be a part of. And if you do it on campus, it also gives you a chance to sit in on classes and meet current students and have lunch with them and get more of a feel for our fit. Through the team exercise, what we're gauging are not only your teamwork skills, but your interpersonal and communication skills. All of those things are very important, not just in business school, but post-business school. In any career that you're going to pursue, you're going to be working with other people. So we think that it's really important for us to understand what your baseline is for interpersonal skills and communication skills. And we're not expecting everyone to come in here ready to give a speech to 500 students. But we do hope that the students who come into the program will be comfortable being called on in class, in engaging in team projects and presenting their map findings to their client. So that's kind of the rationale behind why we instituted this team exercise. And we're really excited. So far in round one, we've had great interest. The students, or the applicants rather, who have gone through it have given us really positive feedback. Now, granted, they're giving it to us who are on the admissions committee, but we've also heard through current students who are friends of people who have applied in round one, who've heard probably the more honest view, and all of them had a really positive experience, both to get an understanding of what Ross means by teamwork, as well as getting to meet current students and each other. What's next, Diana?
Great. So the next is around how are the interviews conducted? So if somebody's in a different location outside of the U.S., how should they conduct, how is their one-on-one interview conducted?
So the actual interview itself will be exactly the same, whether you're doing it in Mumbai or in Ann Arbor. You will get an invitation from our office to select how you want to interview with an alum near you or on campus. And all of the alums and the interviewers on campus have been trained. They will have your resume. They will ask you a few questions about your background. They'll leave a few minutes at the end for you to ask any questions if you should have any. And they may probe on stuff that's in your resume or things that you bring up during the course of the conversation. But it's really a conversation. It's not testing you on your business knowledge. It's not to test you on a case interview kind of thing. It's really a conversation to get to understand where are you coming from and what do you want to do and why do you think this is a good place for you.
Great. So I'm going to move on some of the questions on some of the things that we've already covered here. Oops, that's not the slide that I want. We'll stay at that one. So there's a question around, does pre-undergraduate experience such as military service count as acceptable work experience?
Yes, if it was full-time, we do count military experience as work experience.
Okay. And how about internships, so training time with an employer before you start your full-time work experience?
Again, that depends on the kind of internship that it is. If you're doing something very administrative, then if it were me, I probably wouldn't include it. But if it was substantive, if you were doing analysis and research and making recommendations and that kind of thing, that's something that I personally would include.
And what would you define as a gap in your experience such that you might want to include something in your optional essay?
I would say a couple months or more, because generally the way we see and expect to see resumes is month and year and the duration. Because when you've only worked for 2 to 5 years, the years aren't going to be that helpful if you just tell us 2010 to 2011. It could be a full 2 years or it could be 6 months or less. So please do include the months, and that would be the yardstick, 2 months or more.
I have another insider tip. Are you ready?
Okay.
Interviewers are going to ask you about your work experience and the progressions that you've had and why you've made the transitions that you have from one job to the next. So if you do have gaps in your employment, they're going to ask about that, but they're going to want to know what you were doing to progress yourself during those time periods. So there's not a hard and fast rule in terms of the gap in work experience. We really just want to understand your story because, again, this comes down to as soon as you start business school, there are recruiters on campus very, very soon after you start. And they're going to have the same questions. What were you doing during that time when you weren't working? Now, everybody understands that many of you graduated during a time when the economy, at least here in the U.S., was particularly turbulent. So it is okay that there are, times when you may have made some transitions. We just want to understand what the transitions are that you've made. And actually, even if you've moved from job to job, we're going to want to know a little bit about that as well.
I want to share a tip with you. One way to impress your interviewers is to really know why you want to go to Ross, or come to Ross, rather. If you get that question down, your interviewers are likely to be very positively excited about you.
Okay. How do you sign up for the team exercise? How do you know that you've been extended an interview? When does that happen? And then how do you sign up for the team exercise? Where will those be taking place?
So that will come with the invitation to interview in general. So if you're invited to interview, do the one-on-one interview, then you have the option to also participate in the team exercise. In round 2, we don't have the exact date yet that the interview invitations will go out, but you can kind of plan on late January through late February that the interviews will actually take place. The team exercises will be held in Ann Arbor, India, Shanghai, and Seoul. The dates are to be finalized in the next few weeks. The biggest thing that you can do is actually keep the tabs on Sujin's blog, which I'm sure many of you do. So we will continue to share information through that vehicle to give you an idea of our team exercises. But we'll also be sharing with those who've been invited to the team exercise what the details will be. And normally that's, again, a couple weeks after the admissions deadline. Again, round 2 admissions deadline is January the 2nd.
For applicants who've already submitted their application, is there anything that an applicant can do to strengthen his or her candidacy?
At this point, no. We're going through the final review process over the next couple weeks. If you weren't invited to interview, it's possible that you will be waitlisted, and so you'll have another, you'll go through another review process with the round 2 pool in January, February. So it's possible that you could get an interview invitation with the round 2 pool.
Can you talk a little bit about how scholarships work? How are you considered for a scholarship?
Sure. No application necessary. We base it on the components of the application that you provide, your admissions application. And so what we're looking at is the overall strength of your experience, your academic achievements, your goals, and we're trying to look at that holistically. We're not just looking at you as an individual, but we're looking at you across the pool. So if someone says, will I be admitted or will I get a scholarship in any given year, I can't tell you because we don't do it in a vacuum. We do it within the pool. So there's no way that I could say that this kind of a profile is absolutely the kind that will be admitted or absolutely the kind that will get a scholarship. But again, we're looking for strengths and achievements, goals that fit with what Ross has to offer, potential to be actively engaged in the school, and being part of a very diverse class.
There are questions about how to submit your GMAT test scores, whether it needs to be informal or formal, and how can you take the GMAT after and submit a score?
We highly encourage you to take the GMAT and submit the best score possible at the time of application, because as soon as we get your application, that's when we're going to start the review process. If you take the GMAT after we've started the review process, it can be folded in, but the later it gets, there's no guarantee that we'll have time to incorporate that into the committee's full review. So as far as submitting the scores, when you're applying, there's a field in the online application where you can submit your unofficial score, but unless we have your official score, we can't make a decision. So if we don't have every component of your application, then we won't review it, and we won't we'll push you to the next round. So make sure that everything is in by the deadline, including your GMAT score. Now, if you do take the GMAT, let's say, and get a better score a week later after our deadline, by all means, send it to us. But as I said, the later that we get, the less likely that we're able to include it in our review process.
Okay. There are a few questions around years of experience required to be in the program, particularly a few folks who said, you know, I'm maybe on the lighter end in terms of work experience, maybe just a year or two. Why do you look at years of work experience, and what are you looking for?
So our MBA program is heavily discussion-based and experience-based. So people are providing insights from their experience, and they can process it in a different way when they've got context based on full-time work experience. So, and a lot of what we do, a lot of the learning happens from peer-to-peer conversations in class or on teams. In my industry, in my company, here's how we handled it. Here are the things that I saw. How does this apply here? And so it's a matter of the value add that you would bring to a class and to a team. We do have people who have work experience on the lower end of the year spectrum, 1 to 2 years. There aren't as many. Then we've got people with 8 to 10 years of work experience. It's less about the quantity and more about the type and quality of work experience, to have the contributions that you've made, your awareness, your maturity, your professionalism, the substance that you'll have to bring to class conversations based on experience.
Okay, how about integrated reasoning? How do you think about integrated reasoning?
So our preliminary thought is that it will probably be a very useful indicator, but because it's still very new, we're not counting that as an official part of our selection process. That said, if we have 2 candidates who are fairly similar in terms of GMAT score, academics, work experience, if we need something to tip us over the edge for one candidate or another, we would look at the integrated reasoning score. Just to give you an idea of why we think it might be useful, we had a small group of our MBA Choose last year take the integrated reasoning section of the GMAT, and they said that it was very similar to the kind of thinking that they had to do in a lot of their MBA classes, very integrated thinking, not just knowing how to apply a formula, but thinking about data across different data sets and how to interpret and analyze and put meaning to it. So I anticipate that going forward, as we have a few more years of data to show the correlation between an integrated reasoning score and performance in our MBA program, that it will become an official part of the score. But it isn't as of yet.
Okay. There's a question about dual degrees, and do you need to apply, for example, if you're going to apply to the Masters of Public Policy in the MBA program, do you submit 2 separate applications? And, you know, what are the opportunities for dual degrees or taking courses outside of Ross here?
Okay. So if you're applying for 2 programs, a dual degree, you apply independently. However, on our application, we do have a checkbox to indicate that you are a dual degree student so that we are aware that you will be awaiting a decision from another program. The decisions are made completely independently. One school does not influence the outcome of another school. You could be admitted to one and not the other, vice versa, both, or neither. So they are completely independent processes. If you are interested in a dual degree, you could do that at the time of your Ross application. Or if you're just not 100% sure yet, you could start at Ross and then in your first year apply to another graduate program on campus. Or vice versa. If right now you're just thinking about business and you're a couple of years out, but you know that you want to do, let's say, natural resources and environment or something else, you can go ahead and apply to that program. And then once you're there, you can also apply to Ross in your first year of that program as well. Now, outside of dual degrees, you've got plenty of opportunities to take classes across the University of Michigan campus at any of our other 99 top 10 ranked grad programs on campus. So there's plenty of opportunity for you to take classes in the law school, engineering, public policy, public health, natural resources, education, social work, you name it, you can take classes there. If you can fit it into your schedule, you can do it and get credit for it. So we allow you to take up to 10 credits outside of Ross.
Susan, one of the things that I found was really great about my experience here was that I was thinking about, you know, business and education, sort of the intersection between the public and private sectors. I was exploring a variety of things, and so to be able to take a higher education strategy class at the School of Ed or a public budgeting class at the Public Policy School, or even having an internship in the Provost's office, taking a look at revenue-generating strategies for the university, I thought it was a really great way to complement my Ross experience. And so I was able to not only take all the classes I wanted to at Ross, but really to pick up on any one of these top graduate programs that we have literally right next door. The law school is right next door, the policy school, social work, education, public health isn't far, the School of Natural Resources. So one of the things that we find at Ross is that people who come here tend to have a variety of interests, and they want to be able to manage all those interests during the MBA experience. Now, you never really have to leave the business school to take specialized courses in healthcare, urban revitalization, real estate, and the like. But I think the fact that you have those opportunities to take advantage of the broader University of Michigan is really something that's particularly exciting.
And the other thing is there are students from all of those other grad schools taking business classes with our MBA students. So you're building a network outside of the business school as well.
Great.
What are the hot questions out there, Diana?
Oh gosh, there's questions about Tauber and Forte Fellows and application volume. You know, I think though, given I'm looking, we've got about 10 minutes left, you know, there are a few questions that we commonly, you know, receive from folks, a couple of different things that haven't come up, or just maybe some things that differentiate Ross from other programs. And, you know, one of the things that we haven't gotten a chance to touch on is the MAP program, or our Multidisciplinary Action Project, which happens in the last 7 weeks of your first year. Do you want to talk a little bit about what MAP is?
Sure. Hopefully you have some idea. If you're interested in Ross, you've done a little bit of research, but some of the highlights of what MAP, or the benefits of what MAP provides students are these. You get hands-on learning. You're applying what you've learned in your first 3 quarters of your MBA program and putting it to use for a client. So it's like a mini consulting project for 7 weeks. And given that a lot of summer internships are a mere 10 weeks, a 7-week consulting project is almost the equivalent of an internship. And a lot of our students do leverage that as part of their interviewing conversation in their second year. They do reference their MAP experience because it was so substantial. They're working intensively, full-time for that 7 weeks on a consulting project. It can be across any industry, a variety. So we've got ones in corporate, in the corporate arena, nonprofit, and startups. And half of our MAP projects are outside of the U.S. And so students get to bid on up to 15 of their top choices among the 100-plus projects that are available. And they get put on a team of 4 to 6 students to work on these mini consulting projects for the full 7 weeks. And what's great about it is that not only are you applying the academic learnings from your first 3 quarters, but you're also having to navigate the organizational issues with the client. You're having to navigate team challenges. There are leadership issues that you will deal with, all based on working on this team that you're thrown on to work on a very real project that you're going to be presenting your findings to the executives within an organization or a nonprofit or a startup.
Great. How are MAP teams chosen?
So there is a black box, not literally a black box, but there's an algorithm that evaluates students' rankings. So every student puts in their ranked top 15 projects, and it's put into an algorithm that's been carefully derived over the last 20-plus years that we've been doing this. And by and large, I have yet to hear in the almost 10 years that I've been here of any student not getting one of their top 5 choices. Students base their MAP choices on a variety of factors. Some of them will say, I really want to have an international experience, so that's my priority. Some will say, I really want to work in the tech industry, so I'm going to bid on projects that are in the tech industry. Some will say, I know that somewhere down the line, I might want to do nonprofit, not immediately after graduation, so maybe this is my foray into the nonprofit world. I will use MAP to gain experience in that arena. So people can use it for a variety, or prioritize based on a variety of dimensions, and it's really up to you.
I mean, the project list, I mean, I remember taking a look at it as a student thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many different projects and so many different ways I could look at this.
Pick?
Which ones do I choose?
Yeah.
You know, you have people who look at, you know, I'm coming from a small company. I'd like to work for a big company. I'd like to see how things work at Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, American Express, or at a small micro-lending organization, or as an entrepreneur in Israel, right? There are so many different options for MAP, and what I would say is the MAP projects are actually listed on the MAP website. You can see the projects that were undertaken this past year in March and April when our MAP students went out to go do their projects. There's a question about the curriculum and the flexibility of the curriculum and what options are available. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So we do have a core curriculum which happens in the first the first 3 quarters of the first year. There is room for electives during that time, but we do want you to have the business fundamentals, things that you would expect in an MBA program: accounting, statistics, marketing, finance, strategy, operations, all those kinds of things will build your foundation for your second year where you'll take entirely electives. And you can concentrate if you want. We do have a couple areas of concentration. You can concentrate in healthcare starting next year. You can get a healthcare certificate. We do have a real estate certificate program as well. We're looking into others. Or you can get the dual degree, or really, to call something a concentration, it's really up to you to take as many classes as you want in a particular area, or you can take classes across a variety of functional areas.
So there's a question about, you know, what percentage of the class, incoming class, or, you know, who's entrepreneurs, what's the mix? Can you kind of give an overview of who's here at Ross when we admit these students, and when, you know, the 450 that we have in the incoming or the first year class, what does that look like? What's the overall class profile? What are you looking for?
One of the things that I love about our applicants and our students is the great diversity of the experience and the geographies and the interests that they bring to the table. And so our classes look very different every year. We have, of course, people who come from business backgrounds in marketing and finance and consulting, but we've also got many people coming from the nonprofit, government, military, startups, schools, hospitals, the legal field, journalists. We've got Olympic athletes, professional athletes. We had someone graduate a couple of years who played in the Super Bowl. So there's a wide variety of experience, and we're not trying to get to a certain percentage of any type of student. We're wanting to get as diverse a class as possible so that you have a really great experience learning from and meeting people who have had different experiences than you.
Great, and I know you and I talk a lot with our alumni, with our current students in terms of what they like most about the experience. What are some of the things that you hear in terms of what people say about their Ross experience?
I mean, Diane and I can speak to this as well, being alums. One of the things that I think is so great is our alumni network. What's great about our alumni network is that they're very willing to help others, whether it's helping current students, other alums, helping the school, whether it's for networking or for connecting someone with a friend that they know in another industry, providing insights on their own industry. People are really helpful. They've got this passion for the school that fosters a willingness to talk to people and share their experience. So I think that is one of the things that comes out frequently when I talk to alums, and my own feeling as well. And there's a lot of them, since the vast majority of people come from outside of Michigan, over 90% are coming from outside of Michigan, they're surprised at how much they loved their Ann Arbor experience. People who are coming from New York City or from San Francisco, they think Ann Arbor's in the Midwest, it may be limited in terms of the experiences that I can have, and they all go away feeling this great love and passion for Ann Arbor because it was such a positive experience, unlike what they expected. There's an energy, there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of green spaces, a lot of ethnic restaurants, a lot of cultural things happening around the university that you can do everything that you might want to do in a big city on a smaller scale.
You know, that was one of the things I was thinking about when I came here. I was in Chicago before I came to Ross, and you know, I love Chicago, but I love Ann Arbor as well, and I don't feel like you know, I'm really missing that much with a larger city because Ann Arbor is really a bigger city, really condensed. There's so many options and opportunities here, and it truly is a place that people love. I mean, and one of the things that I love about being an alum is that when I talk to my fellow alums, they, you know, don't just say, oh gosh, wasn't it good that I got my MBA and I went to Ross. They say, I loved my Ross experience. How can I give back? How can I pay it forward? How can I help? And I just love that that's sort of the culture and the vibe and the energy that we have here. And I would say even as recently as this week, one of my classmates was here from a major CPG company that was recruiting on campus. And she stopped by and I said, how were the students that you met? And she said, fantastic. You know, she loves coming back to see that the strength and the quality of the students that we have here continues to remain exceptionally high and strong. And to be part of a network like that is something that both Sujin and I have a lot of pride in, as well as our fellow alums and the current students here. And we hope that you get a chance to see that. One of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you've not gotten a chance to connect with our current students, is to connect with one of our current student ambassadors. We have about 150 current students listed on our website who you can reach out to and ask questions about their experience in the program. The nice thing is that you can filter on a variety of different dimensions, whether it's their career interests, the clubs that they're a part of, where they're from, various features that you can sort by to find somebody whose background resonates with you so that you can reach out and learn a little bit more about their experience at Ross. So I would encourage you to do that. That link can be found on our website.
Are there any last questions that we want to answer before time's up, Diana?
I am taking a quick look here. Question about how about people who are coming with partners? What percentage of the class of people come with a partner or family, and what's their experience like here?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Diana. I think it's at least a third, if not more, are bringing partners here. Some of them, many of them have families, or they start families when they're here. It's a really strong partner community. In fact, there's a partners club which hosts a lot of social volunteer work and other types of events so that they can build their community. But what I find is that a lot of the partners are almost as visible around the school as the students themselves. They're very much a part of the student experience here. And upon graduation, a lot of the partners are often just as sad, if not sadder, to leave Ann Arbor and each other as our students are. So it's a very tight-knit community.
Absolutely. I felt that as well. In fact, there were probably some classmates where I knew their partner better than I knew the classmate, just because the partners are so integrated in the experience here. We are reaching the end of our webinar, and I know that we've not gotten a chance to get to all of your questions. And what we're going to do is I will download the questions, and we will do our best to answer them. Either Sujin will answer some of them through her blog, or we will try to get to you directly for some of the specific questions that you have. What I would say is if you do have a burning question, you could also reach out to Ross MBA at umich.edu. That's Ross MBA at umich.edu, and our team will do our best to help get you the personalized attention to your questions that you may need. Sujin, in our last minute here, I'm wondering if you've got any last-minute words of wisdom or advice, things that people should be considering as they're finalizing their applications.
I would say to really show who you are, not the image that you want or that you think an MBA admissions committee is looking for. That's going to serve you best so that you're going to get into the school or schools that are best fit for you. And at this point, you're about a month out from round 2, just polish up what you've already started. Take time to step away from it. Don't just focus on that over the holidays. There are better things to do than to wordsmith your MBA application essays. So keep it all in perspective. You put your best foot forward, and good things will happen.
Great. Thank you all so much for participating in our webinar today, and we look forward to reviewing your applications. Go Blue.
Go Blue.